All right, good morning. Thank you for joining. My name is Andy White, and I will be your host. Today, we want to do a quick review of the 911 legislation mandates, and then to see how we can configure those in the QX to meet the requirements. We're going to start off just got a quick review of some of those requirements that were set out for us a few years ago. There were two federal laws that went into place. One was regards to it's called Kerry's Law. I'm sure most are familiar with that. And the second one was Section 506 of the Ray Bombs Act. All right, Kerry's Law was actually implemented two items. One was with regards to the direct dialing and notification for MLTS, which is multi-line telephone systems. Now, the direct dialing for 911 basically states that any phone that can dial to the PSTN should be able to reach emergency services by simply dialing the digits 911 without having to dial a prefix code, for example, 9. So 911. And that was what started all this to begin with. All right, so no prefix code. All right, the second was emergency notification. So all 911 calls must provide a notification to alert local personnel that a 911 call was made. It should include the caller's callback number, where it was dialed from, and the notification can be sent via email, SMS, voicemail, etc. So when did that go into effect? That was back in February of 2020. All right. So and it applies to any MLTS that's been manufactured or sold since that date. All right. The second legislation was the Ray Bombs Act, which requires a dispatchable location be sent to the 911 dispatch center when an emergency call is received. So the dispatchable location, it's a basically location delivered to the PSAP, that's the public service answering point operator, that with a 911 call, that includes the street address of the calling party plus any additional information such as a suite number, apartment number, floor number, or any other information necessary to identify the location of the calling party. The compliancy dates, of course, have passed. That was back in January 2021 and 22 for on-premise devices, and both for fixed and non-fixed devices and off-premise devices. So how are these dispatchable locations going to be updated? Preferably, the MLTS would automatically provide the precise location. Secondly, be a manual update where the user would update and confirm their location via, for example, like a system, some sort of a prompt. There's a lot of information out there. I just posted a few links here. Here's references to the MLTS, which is regarding the Kerry's Law and Ray Bombs Act, the implementation of Kerry's Law, and the Electronic Code of Federal Regulators. All right, so you've got some information there you can take a look at, and of course there's tons of information out there on the out on the website. Okay, quick Google searches will bring forth all kinds of information, more than you'll want. So what we want to do is we're going to jump into the QX. And the first thing we want to do, this is my local QX 200. And first thing we're going to want to do is configure our test trunk, which we're going to do with our ClearFly, of course. Who else? So we'll go ahead and get that configured. So within our QX200, nice review showing how you configure the trunks as well. So that's a bonus. So we go to telephony, and we do have a voice over IP carrier wizard to help us implement that information. So we drop down, we see ClearFly. We put in our account name, which I have, and of course the password. And I do have to update the server. We have a test account with them. And whenever you configure your account, you may also want to include the authentication username that is a requirement. They'll ask for that when you initiate any of your phone calls. All right, so when you go to make a call, how are you going to reach and use the service for ClearFly, the SIP trunk? You could dial with a prefix digit, for example, like 9, or with a pattern, say like 10 digits, or even 1 plus 10 digits. I think today we're going to use the dial 9 prefix. And then also you can specify the emergency code. Of course, it's 911. And we'll go ahead and finish that wizard and let that provision. All right. We want to see if first we can go to status, system status. If we look at our SIP registration, right there at the top, we can see that that account is already provisioned, configured, and registered. All right, let's go ahead and look at the settings, see how it was configured. So if we go to the extensions management, what it does is that when you use the that VoIP configuration wizard, it will create a virtual extension. In this case, extension 99. You can see it was added by the voice over IP carrier wizard. If we do an edit on that extension by clicking on that little shield, okay, and we go to the SIP settings, you'll see where the account information ends up. The SIP settings is where you configure any sort of external service you're going to be using, any sort of external SIP server. All right. So there it has the username or DID number, has the password, account, etc. And we are registering on their service using UDP. And if you look at the SIP advancings, this is where it populates the authentication username. So that's the first thing it does. It creates the account, which goes off. It registers for the service. The second thing it will do is it's going to create call routing entries to be able to place those calls. So if we go back to telephony, call routing, and we look at the bottom, you'll see 2 new entries that were entered. Entry 16 and 17, first with a dial 9, and the second one with the 911 option. Okay, let's just, we're going to take a look at the settings here for the dial 9. So it states, here's your number pattern, dial with the digit 9. We want to delete that access code or prefix digit. It's going to be an IP to PSTN phone call. There's the server information and the port number. And when they ask for authentication, we've got the account configured on extension 99 with that username and password. Okay, when we make an outbound call, we want to send the correct caller ID, and this is the page that you could do that on. This is the third page. Here we want to put it in number of digits that we're going to delete. So I just put 99, just clear out any digits that exist in the caller ID currently. And then here in the prefix, we're going to replace those digits, whatever is there, we're going to replace it with our actual DID number. So this is how you do your caller ID modification. And while we're on this page, I just want to highlight this option here for the source type. That specifies that only users on the system, on the PBX, are going to be allowed to use this call routing entry. So if you're going to use this call routing entry, you've got to be an extension on the PBX. Which extension? We don't care. We've got a wildcard in there. All right, that's your main security setting. All right, so we go ahead and enter that. So when I dial 9, it should be working. 9-972-692-1166. I've got a test phone here.
Welcome to Epygi Technology.
Okay, that is working for us, so that's a good thing. Now I also want to use that same DID number on the entry below, which is your 911 route. Okay, so if we go to the same page where we can modify the caller ID, we'll delete the digits existing and replace it with our caller ID. Okay, so that's so now when we make an outbound call, it's going to present that caller ID. All right, and it's that caller ID that on the ClearFly account that you're going to use to set your location, okay, your address, and that's the information that we presented to the PSAP. All right. We also want to take a look and see what options we have for notifying. So actually, before we go any further, let's just see if we can make a test call here. If I look at the ClearFly portal on this account, let me refresh this page. This is the test account that we have with them. You'll see here over it is registered, so that's showing the registration's active. There's an E911 mode that you can activate and put it in a test mode. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. So you can change it to test mode for calls. All right, I'm going to refresh this page, make sure that's been enabled. And that does take a second to update. Refresh it. All right. Okay, there it is. That's what I was looking for, highlighted in red. It says E911 test mode has been activated. Okay, so we should be good to go. So now we make a test call to the 911. We should be able to reach ClearFly and it should be able to give us the information. So go ahead. We're going to dial 911.
You have called the ClearFly 911 address verification line. Your calling number is 6892076970. Please hold while we look up the 911 address for that number.
Okay, so it's not actually going to find our address because we have a test account, and so that part of it's not working. But obviously, if this was an actual account, it would have your address information on there. Okay, so so that's how you can provide. That's one method, and there's others how you can provide your address information to the PSAP. Okay. Now, what about local notification? So let's. I'm just going to do an edit on this entry once again. And without enabling anything at this point, we're just going to show what we can do. Actually, it's on the first page. On the very first page, towards the bottom, there's a call alert settings. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and enable that. Hit next. And on about the fourth page, you get to this call alert settings page. So when somebody dials this 911 entry, here are some of the options that we can generate versus a system event log. We can send a notification via email. And if you have SMS configured, you can send an SMS notification. We can leave a voicemail. And we're going to come back to that in a moment. And that you can also, the new option that we added in this latest release is to send a notification via DNA. It's actually called short for dial and announce, and you specify which extension is going to be used. All right, I'm going to go back. I'm not actually going to enable that yet. So let's take a look at what we have to do to configure those two options first. So the one would be the voicemail alert. All right, we use our extensions for numerous options. One of those I've created here is a virtual extension, in this case 502. And this I've just labeled for 911 voicemail alert. It's a virtual extension, it just means that there's no phone associated with it, no IP line. All right, so if I go in and edit this extension, which I've created, if you go to the general settings, okay, you get the display name, that way you know what this extension is being used for. And I drop down to here on the left, it says the voice mailbox setting. Okay, and there's an option here called shared mailbox. Okay, so the idea of what we're going to do in this voicemail notification is when somebody dials 911, what we want to have happen is we're going to have a button on the phone that'll be lit, and when you press that that button, it tells you who it was that dialed the 911. Okay, so it's basically just it's a shared mailbox, also referred to as a general mailbox. A lot of customers use this general mailbox for, when they leave the office for lunch, they come back and somebody's left a message in the general mailbox, office mailbox. Anybody with that key on their phone, they can play the messages. Well, this is what we're using for the 911 notification. Okay, so we create a general shared mailbox. Okay, to make this extension a shared mailbox, all you have to do is go to the mailbox access list and go in here and do an add and define who's allowed access to it. You could get very specific and only have particular extensions, but that's not necessary. Just put a wildcard here and say any extension has access to this particular voicemail box. By doing that simple little option, what you could do now is you can go back and create this extension on a key on the phone. So we go to interfaces, that's where we configure our phones. The IP line. Okay, and this case we're using IP line 3. Let's see, it's going to be IP line 4, which is this extension 103. And on the far right side, if you click on MPK, the programmable key, we'll use key 4. And on key 4, you'll see that there's of course, you have all your watched extensions. You can program on these keys, different options, call parks, etc. Well, the one we're going to be looking at is the shared mailbox extension 502. So click on that, and then you can label it 911 call. All right, going to save those settings. You save that setting. You want to reboot the phone. That way, the phone gets the new configuration file, and it will have those settings applied, and that key will be configured on it with the key label 911 call. All right, so the phone beside me here, it is rebooting. So that's the shared mailbox. Let's go back to the extensions. And now let's look at the extension 501 for the 911 call alert. This is going to be used for our dial and announce. All right, so go ahead and this time you're going to go to the little icon here person, that's the user settings. All right, and caller ID based services. So it's here in the caller ID services where you can configure different options, mini extension ringing, like a ring all group, no answer call forwarding, etc. Well, one of the options here is called dial and announce over here on the far right. If I click on it, I have an interest of time, I've already pre-configured this extension. So the idea is that when you call to this extension 501, it's going to call to these numbers. I say numbers because it can also call to an external number or extension. And when that call is answered, it's going to play a message. So let's take a look at some of the settings here. I'm going to, let's do an edit on this one. If you're going to call to an external party, like cell phone, you're going to use the call type auto, and all that does is send those digits, whatever digits you enter into this address field, they're going to be referenced within the call routing table. It's going to find a matching pattern to place that external call. All right, you can also specify if it was an extension, you just specify which extension it is you're going to be calling. You can have that extension configured to do an auto answer. So hands-free, auto goes off hook automatically. You can also have that extension configured so that it interrupts an existing phone call. So if this is urgent enough, and oftentimes it is, you can drop their existing call and it will be present them with this new dial and announce phone call. You can also use the audio line out jack on the front of the system. You can specify a ring duration, so how long is it going to ring if it, before it times out, if they don't answer. And then you could put a delay, maybe give them a chance to answer the phone. You could delay it a second or two before you play the message. And you could specify here on the display name for caller ID purposes, labeled it 911 alert. How many times you're going to play that message? 2 times. And here's the actual, when it does connect to that caller or that phone, it's going to play a fixed message. Okay, that fixed message, you can record it from your extension, you can upload it, you could pre-record it, you could upload it, but it will play whatever message that you have designated here. By the way, this is also used for, let's say, the emergency notifications. Let's say, if there's a, uh, we have to deal with problems today with active shooters and things like that, and you want to make a broadcast announcement, this is a great option for that. Okay, it can also be used like in schools and things like that to make that announcement. Okay, so that's how you configure this dial and announce. Anytime you dial to this extension, it's going to call to these numbers and it's going to make the announcement on answer. So we go back and the feature is enabled, so we're good there. Okay, so so we've got our 2 extensions configured. This is the 5. You can see I've done another extension for a 500 for like a lockdown, alert. You can notify, send out the that broadcast that way. Put the all the school in like a lockdown. So 501 is our voicemail, or sorry, dial and announce. 502 is the voicemail alert, and you want to let's go ahead and configure the call routing. Let's do that. So back to telephony, call routing, and edit this 911 entry. Enable the call alert settings. Get to that page. We'll generate a system event log. We'll send an email. We're going to leave a voicemail on this extension 502. We're going to send a notification, dial announce to extension 501. And we do next. And now that's configured. All right, we want to make sure that we're still in our 911 test mode. We don't want to make any calls to 911 this morning. All right, it is in test mode still, so that's good. Actually, it stays active, I think, for a period of 4 hours, and then it shuts off. All right, so let's go ahead and dial the 911. Let's see what happens.
You have called the ClearFly 911 address verification line.
Okay, I'm going to hang up that call. Okay, let me answer this call, and it should play our announcement for us.
911 alert. Somebody from the lobby at 123 Main Street has dialed 911. Emergency services have been notified. Please assist emergency personnel. 911.
All right, so it plays the message. Okay, so that was a pre-recorded fixed message that was on the dial and announce. Okay, now if we look over my extension, the 103 that we configured the 911 voicemail notification on, right now I've got a red light on that key number 4. It's labeled 911 call. So now if I press that key,
To enter the voicemail box, press received today at 10:27 a.m. Emergency call made from number 100.
okay, so it lets you know which extension it was that dialed the emergency call. If we look at the events, status, look at the event, it also gives us a notification. That, by the way, that event log can be sent via email. Any of those event logs can be sent via email. All right, so that's that option's available as well. And then let me see if I refresh my email. Okay, I also had a voicemail, email configured, and then I also got an actual email that tells me that the emergency call was made, and tells me which extension, the timestamp, and there's not an address associated with that, but it would tell me that if I had it configured. All right, so that's those are some of your options. Now this is somewhat, let's say this is set for any extension in the office. So how can you get this to work? Let's say if you have different buildings, different areas, and you want to configure those for other location addresses, right? So you can do that. There's a couple ways of implementing that. So I can have a second DID. So you can basically create you can duplicate this entry. So if you dial 911, I want to make this to using a separate DID, 71, I believe. And I want to make this specific to, you can use a source pattern option up here. So you can make this specific to certain extensions. Let's say in the 200 range. You can use wildcards here. You can put extensions and separate them by commas. You can put a range of extensions in here. So let's just go with the, it's a great place to use the help page, and it'll tell you what valid forms of options that you have for entering those patterns. It's pretty flexible. So you can put a range of extensions. So that's one method. So let me go ahead and just finish this out. And you can have a different notification. So that when somebody else dial it, you can have a different, so it's only notifying users in that area or that building that 911 was notified. So you can have a different dial and announce extension for that. And so you could see here this entry, when somebody in the extensions in the 200 range, if they call this entry, if they dial 911, they're going to be using this particular entry. And actually, to get this to work, you do need to move this up. Okay, in the table. So it's going to test that entry before it uses the default entry, which is not specific to anybody. All right, so that's another method. I can also implement, probably an easier way to do that would be using class of service. Okay, so up here in the top, there's a class of service option. Let's create some classes of service. We'll say building A, building B, building C. Give me a moment here while we create that. Okay, I've got 3 classes of service. You can define those, of course, however you want. Label those whatever you want. And I'm going to enforce the class service grading. Now I can go to my call routing table. And then I can take a look at this entry. So instead of specifying a particular extension using the source pattern, I can use the class of service option, so it can specify that any extensions in building A are going to use particular call routing entry. So it's a little bit easier to use, I think. All right, so this entry applies to building A. You can maybe specify that over here on the right in your description. So the only thing you have left to do now is specify which extensions are in building A. Very easy to do. You can just come in here and say if I do an edit on this extension 100, go to the class of service settings, and there's your 3 options. So you can just specify this particular extension belongs to building A or building B, building C, etc. If you want to do that to multiple extensions, you can select those extensions and you can do a multiple edit and click on class of service settings and choose your building. All right, so that's probably the easiest method, I think, to be able to use those if you need to distinguish certain areas of the building, certain extensions that need to have, they're going to be sending out a different caller ID or different DID, and that DID is going to be configured in Clarifly with a different address. All right, so you can, that's your second method. There is a, so what about our devices for, let's say, for eCall? So you got, your your handsets. We got the soft phone, which is eCall, and they could be located anywhere. They could be at their home, office, Starbucks, traveling, wherever it is. If they open eCall and dial 911, you don't want that call coming through you might not want that call to come through the PBX and use this particular call routing entry. Okay, so we need to know where that phone's location is. Okay, what better way of doing it than using the smartphone using its own location identifier? Okay, so so you can do that. So when they dial 911, and you can implement that here by going to Faces, And if I click over here on in IP lines and then go on the far right, it says eCall settings. So this is where you could change your eCall, the banner color. That's the default, the red or crimson. And just below that, you've got emergency codes separated by comma. So you could put, for example, 911 or 933. 933 is actually a test number that you can use. The test number, some providers will allow you to dial 933 and it will provide the information similar to ClearFly. All right. So now whenever when you save this, it's going to push that information out to your eCall devices. So now what will happen is when you dial 911 or that 933, it's going to try to make that test call, or not test call, it's going to try to make that call out across the phone's native dialer. In other words, it's going to try to go out through Verizon or AT&T. It's not going to go. So even though they open eCall, they dial 911 in the eCall app, it's actually placing that call out across the cell phone. Okay, so that's not enabled by default. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware of those settings in here, so that you can change that and make that available. We can't enable it by default. What we selling globally, we don't know what the emergency code is. Obviously in the US it's 911, but you want to enable that. All right. Okay. What other options do we have as far as sending the dispatchable location address? Another option is to use, we've implemented with Telnex. Telnex, you can get an account with them. This is there's a document on the portal, and basically what you're going to do is when you make the 911 call, you're going to send the address information, and that address information is located on the ecQX. Okay, you're going to go to the page called e911.cgi. You have to just type it in up here at the top. It's going to take you to this place where you can specify, of course, with the Telnex, there's the only one that's been implemented. That's implemented this. They use an API. Okay, they're going to give you an API key. You plug it in here, and when you dial here, you're going to pre-populate all of your extensions. You can do that in a CSV format, like an Excel spreadsheet, and put in the extension number and the address, the street name, all the information, city, state, zip code, apartment number, whatever needs to go in that. So then when you dial the 911, it's going to send that information in an API format along with the 911 call. And how do you implement that? You go back to your call routing entry, and there's an option down here for send the 911 info to the carrier. You just need to enable that. It doesn't present you with a new page like some of the others do. But when you enable that, I don't have that account, so I'm not able to test that and demonstrate that, but you can get that account through Telnex. It sends the API out ahead of the call, the 911 call, and so they can tie the two together so that you've got it'll send that API and reference the extension number, and they'll be able to have your address, and they'll be sent to the PSAP operator. All right, and the one other method would be to use Red Sky. Red Sky is another option. We've done testing with them, and they've got a lot of options for different endpoints and soft phones and things like that. And if you need to map out a building, and specify specific areas that are going to be sending certain information, building number, floor number, room number, maybe like a campus, you need something like that, a large school. You can use Red Sky has a lot of options for that. You're going to keep the information, the address, all that's going to be kept on their portal. It can be updated on the fly by end users. And when you go to make a call, you're going to, instead of sending them the DID number, you'll be sending them an identifier, and that identifier is what they use to identify your account, and which will have your address information in it. So that would be yet another option for you. Okay. Going back, let's see. That pretty much wraps up our discussion. Okay. If you do have additional questions, and we'll probably reach out to you here at some point, you can send me an email. It's andy.white@epygi.com. Of course, you can always reach our sales team, sales@epygi.com, and we can go over any questions that you might have on any of these options that you've seen. Of course, these are available on the ecQX as well as the premise-based devices. The configuration on those is going to be the same. All right, so that pretty much concludes our discussion today. We were able to keep it within the 45-minute window, so that's good. Just be sure to reach out to us, and I appreciate your time. And thank you for joining our discussion here on the emergency alert options on the ecQX. Thank you so much.